Parties and alcohol are always risk factors for possible crime. But when it comes to the turbulent environment of a not-so-safe town, these risks increase many times over. Unfortunately, the carelessness of the victim and the inattention of friends led to a terrible tragedy that shook the entire campus of a university. Jena Bertley was born on November 4th, 1994, in Harrisburg, the capital of Pennsylvania, USA. Jena's parents were happily married. They met while still studying at the university. The girl grew up in an atmosphere of love and care of her Catholic family. Since childhood, Jena showed love for animals and sought to help not only them, but also people, actively participating in volunteer projects. She was a cheerful and friendly girl. After graduating from high school in August 2013, Jena entered Temple University, which was located in Florida. There, she quickly found friends and a community, becoming an active participant in women's organizations and a fighter for women's rights. Jena perceived the new stage of her life as an exciting journey, maintaining close ties with her family and regularly visiting relatives at home. During the winter, she spent a lot of time snowboarding in her native region. At the age of 19, she suffered a serious leg injury after a fall, requiring pins and plates, and began months of recovery. Despite the difficulties, Jena returned to campus in the summer, hoping for a successful healing of the wound. But complications soon arose and the girl was hospitalized again. This period was especially difficult for Jena. The active and energetic girl lost the ability to move freely and was forced to use a wheelchair. However, it was through these challenges that she became even closer to her friends and family and also started blogging. Throughout 2014, she published many posts on various life and social issues, trying to maintain a positive attitude and inspire her followers. Her dreams were related to designing various things, which she shared on her social media page. In 2015, Jena made one of her dreams come true. She started creating designer necklaces, opened a small online store, and donated 20% of the profits to charity. Despite her apparent success, close friends knew that Jena's life was not all smooth sailing. After the injury, her mental state worsened. She was depressed, went through a depressive period, which even required treatment in a psychiatric institution. These experiences were reflected in her blog, where she openly spoke about her struggle with depression, anxiety, and attention deficit disorder. Not wanting to waste time, Jena continued to strive to get an education. In 2015, she successfully graduated from a local college, received support from friends who helped her return to normal life. It's good that in our time, it is easier and faster to get a sought-after profession. One of them is a marketplace manager. More than 20,000 new sellers register on the platforms every month. Each of them needs a person who will manage the account, set up advertising, and generate profit. This is what marketplace managers do. This is remote work with a convenient schedule and an income of 150,000 rubles, allowing you to simultaneously manage several projects. You can complete the training in 2 months on the course Marketplace Manager from the Edison Academy. The course teachers are professionals from top Russian retail companies. Here you will be taught how to work with the largest platforms: Velberis, Ozon, Yandex, Market, AliExpress, and Spare Megamarket. You will master all the skills for selecting and promoting products, conducting analytics, sales, and much more. Experts note a high demand for universal specialists, since many brands seek to develop sales on several marketplaces at once. The main feature of the course is an emphasis on practice, work on real business tasks and cases. At the end of the training, you will create your own project, which will immediately go into your portfolio. You will also have access to a personal mentor for a whole year. I trust Edison. They have been training people in top Russian companies for over 10 years. To start your journey to a new profession, follow the link in the description and leave a request for a free consultation. With my promo code FRIDAY, the discount increases to 65% plus 3 additional courses for free. In the fall of 2017, Jena resumed her studies at Temple University in her previous specialty, film and media, but in a different city, Philadelphia. Moving to a new campus meant new prospects for her. However, Philadelphia was notorious for its high crime rate, and the only safe place was the walls of a student dorm. Walking the city streets at night was risky, although students rarely adhered to strict safety rules. Almost immediately after moving, Jena suffered a series of misfortunes. Already in the first week of school, she got into a car accident, receiving minor injuries. Her father rushed to help his daughter to sort out the situation. This happened on Wednesday, August 30th, 2017. The next day, 22-year-old Jena had early morning classes, so she stayed on campus. That Wednesday night, there was a birthday party for her roommate, Davis, the coach. The party coincided with the university's traditional Wild Wednesdays, when students throw wild parties. Wild Wednesdays became an integral part of student life at the university, turning into vibrant weekly events. After classes ended, each such evening, young people would head to the bars, enjoying the atmosphere of freedom and fun. Since Jena's father was nearby, he decided to spend the evening with his daughter at a restaurant, and then took her to a party with friends. Decided not to ruin the student tradition by being there and stayed overnight at the hotel. In fact, this Wednesday was Jena's first wild one, and she didn't plan on missing out on the opportunity to have fun after her recovery. She and her classmates visited several bars, the last of which was the Sports Bar Web, located near campus. That night, the place was packed with students who had come to enjoy the noisy atmosphere of the party. There, Jena met up with friends, including Nick Davis. Around midnight, the young man left, assuming that they would see each other again later, when Jena had finished her fun, but the girl never showed up on campus. Closer to 1 o'clock in the morning, when the bar began to close, the whole company left, leaving Jena unaccompanied. The guy returned home and went to bed, waiting for a call from Jena. Waking up in the night, he noticed that the neighbor never came, which seemed strange to him. Taking the phone, he found several messages from Jena, one of which contained a request for help. This alarmed the young man, and he immediately sent a response, but the message remained unread. The guy knew that the bar was already closed, and even being drunk, Jena could easily take a taxi and quickly get to the hostel, but her absence caused concern. He tried to contact the other students who were with the girl, but most of them were either asleep or didn't know anything about what had happened. They weren't that close with Jena yet, so they didn't notice that they had left without her. From talking to his friends, the guy found out that Jena had been left alone at the bar, and everyone had gone home. This news caused him to panic, because he was well aware of how dangerous the night streets of Philadelphia were. Deciding to act, he contacted the girl's parents. Jena's parents also understood the seriousness of the situation. The father, who was at the hotel, immediately began searching for his daughter, but his efforts were in vain. In the morning, around 9 o'clock, he went to campus security to ask for help in the search. The girl was about to start her first semester at the university when she suddenly disappeared. Unfortunately, the reaction of the security staff left much to be desired. Knowing about the popular student custom of holding Wild Wednesdays, they assumed that Jena could have been actively involved in drinking alcohol that evening. Such cases of students disappearing while intoxicated were not uncommon. And, as a rule, after some time the students safely returned home, having slept off the alcohol. The parents were told to wait at least a day, assuring them that their daughter would probably return soon. Those 24 hours were the longest for the Bertley family. The father continued to hope that Jena would soon show up, or at least call, but the phone remained stubbornly silent. The next day, he contacted university security again. Finally, security officers responded to the concerned father's request. The first thing they did was review campus video footage and confirm that 22-year-old Jena had indeed not returned to her dorm that night. Then, the guards began questioning the girl's acquaintances, with whom she spent the evening at the bar. Thanks to the testimony of her classmates, it was possible to establish what Jena looked like and what she was wearing on the night of her disappearance. It turned out that the girl disappeared outside the campus, on territory outside the jurisdiction of the university security, so the police joined the investigation. Together with security personnel, they began to understand the circumstances of what had happened. Of particular concern was the fact that Jena Davis's friend had accidentally missed her message asking for help. It did not contain any specific details, but the very presence of such a signal indicated the seriousness of the situation. The police realized that every minute counted, and delay could cost the girl her life. Studying the location data of the missing girl's mobile phone, the police established that the gadget was last active at about 2 a.m. in a bar from where Jena sent a message to a friend. Her trail ended there. Upon arrival, detectives questioned the staff. One of the bartenders who worked the night of the disappearance identified the girl from photo. According to the bartender, Jena stayed at the bar until closing time, spending most of the time alone after her friends left. She seemed depressed, as if she was waiting for someone or for a response to messages that apparently never came, which made her feel bad. Around 1:30 in the morning, a stranger with an athletic build approached her, said something quietly to her, and then sat down at a table. They drank and began talking. At 2 in the morning, the bar closed, the stranger left first, and Jena followed him as if they were walking together. Perhaps he offered to help her, for example, to walk her to the dorm. Perhaps the girl had no other choice, so she agreed. The bartender noted that both were slightly drunk, but did not notice any aggression or coercion towards Jena. The bar surveillance footage corroborated the bartender's story. Detectives spoke to the bar's staff and learned that one of the bartenders knew the guy from the surveillance footage, a regular named Joshua Hopperters, whose phone number the employee had. Once the contact was received, the police immediately contacted Joshua as the possible last person to see Jena. The call went unanswered, and he was sent a voice message with information about the incident. The police intended to meet him in person, believing that he had important information about the whereabouts of the missing person and was a valuable witness. A search began for him for questioning. At the same time, a search was underway for Jena at nearby medical facilities and other possible locations, but to no avail. Joshua later called back in response to the message. He apologized, explaining that he had slept most of the day after a wild night of bar hopping and had little recollection of what had happened. The amount of alcohol consumed raised doubts among the police. Joshua did not remember the details, whether he drank alone, treated someone, or with whom he communicated. The events of that wild Wednesday were erased from his memory. When asked about the missing girl, he denied knowing Jena. He claimed he didn't know who she was, although the bartender said he bought her a drink and talked to her. Investigators suspected Joshua was lying. The bartender claimed the patrons were sober enough to remember the evening's events. Despite the alcohol, they were both confident on their feet, so memory loss seemed unlikely. Buying the girl a drink hinted at his possible interest in her. It turned out that he lived in a rented apartment not far from the bar. The apartment had 4 rooms that the owner rented out. They were occupied by neighbors, mostly students. The detectives hoped to get answers inside the premises, but the door to the room was closed, and they had to turn to the owner of the apartment. She quickly granted access to Joshua's room, where Jena was possibly being held or was simply recovering from too much alcohol. Inside, there was typical college chaos. Among the things and papers were men's shoes with traces of blood on the heel and a roll of toilet paper with suspicious red marks that looked like blood. A warrant was needed to investigate further and seize evidence, so detectives left the apartment to apply for permission. Joshua still did not answer his phone. Obtaining a warrant could take a long time, and investigators were short on time, so they immediately began to study the background of the 29-year-old suspect. Joshua Hopperters was born on February 27, 1988. He was 7 years older than the missing girl. As a child, the boy experienced a tragedy when he was 4 years old. His father was brutally murdered on the outskirts of Philadelphia. The dead man was found tied behind his back, badly beaten, and packed in a garbage bag. As if the victim was deliberately tortured, the crime remains unsolved. The traumatic experience may have affected Joshua's mental state. Those close to the family claimed that the boy had difficulties related to the tragedy, his refusal to cooperate with the police in the case of Jena's disappearance. It could be explained by a strong distrust of law enforcement, since his father's death was never solved. However, detectives were also considering other, darker versions of his behavior. The young man had an extensive criminal history involving illegal substances, alcohol, theft, and drunk driving. However, There was no history of violence or assault that would have attracted the attention of the police. Unfortunately, this information did not help investigators get any closer to solving his identity. While Jena's family went around the city, interviewing potential witnesses and distributing leaflets, students were notified of the girl's disappearance via instant messengers, calling on them to join the search. At the end of September 1st, a young man named Jack Miley called the police. He said that he was friends with Joshua and lived in the next room. On the evening of August 30th, Jack went to a bar with a friend, hoping to meet girls. Around 1 a.m., he left the establishment with other students and woke up the next morning with a severe hangover. Smelling a strong smell of cleaning products, he went out to check what was going on. Joshua was standing in the kitchen, busily scrubbing the floor with bleach. Jack noticed deep scratches on his friend's neck and a cut on his arm that looked like a knife wound. Joshua explained that he had injured his arm when he fell into a thorny bush while drunk and then soiled the room. They both laughed at his awkwardness. After this, Joshua went to the hospital to get stitches for the cut. Later, Joshua told a neighbor that he was going to North Carolina to visit relatives. Although the guys had known each other for a long time, this was the first time Jack had heard about any relatives of Joshua in another state, and the suddenness of the trip seemed suspicious to him. After learning about Jena's disappearance and their acquaintance, and seeing her photo, the neighbor realized that Joshua's wounds and traces of blood in the apartment could be connected to the girl's disappearance. That's when he decided to contact the police. Given the numerous oddities in the stories of both young men, detectives began to suspect that the witness could also be involved in the girl's disappearance, since he was present at the same bar that same evening and lived in the same apartment with Joshua. To clarify his possible role in the events, it was necessary to find both Joshua and Jena. After talking to the informant, he was asked to contact a friend and try to find out the truth about that night and his potential involvement in the student's disappearance. However, Joshua disappeared again and did not answer calls. On September 1st, the suspect's cell phone finally worked, and he picked up the phone. But instead of admitting guilt, he categorically denied his neighbor's accusations. According to him, he was in South Philadelphia and had no plans to travel to North Carolina. Joshua promised to come to the police station to talk to detectives. However, the promises were not fulfilled. He disappeared again. In order to gather more information, FBI agents joined the investigation. With their help, it was possible to determine the location from which the fugitive was negotiating with the police. Tracking showed that Joshua was in northeastern Pennsylvania in a mountainous area, which contradicted his words about being in South Philadelphia. This increased suspicions against him. It seemed he was trying to hide something important and had something to do with Jena's disappearance. As it turned out, he was at his grandmother's house, located near a mountain river. When detectives arrived there, Joshua said he had already spoken to the police and knew nothing about the missing girl. However, the lie quickly came to light. When asked about the reason for the unexpected visit to his grandmother, he made up a story about a tough semester at university and a desire to relax in the mountains. Detectives knew that he had not attended classes for a long time and was on academic leave, so they realized that this was another lie. The investigator noted the defensive cut on his hand and the deep scratches on his neck that the neighbor had mentioned. When asked about the origin of these injuries, Joshua claimed that he had injured himself by breaking a bowl of cereal. However, the nature of the injuries clearly did not match his explanation, which only strengthened the police's belief that he was lying. Joshua was taken to the station with his grandmother. Upon examination, they found not only cuts on his arms and neck, but also deep wounds on his back, some of which have been stitched up. Based on their suspicions and the suspect's apparent lies, detectives obtained a warrant to search his rental home. There were indeed broken dishes and a bowl of cereal in the room, but there was no blood on it, and the nature of the injuries on Joshua's body clearly did not match his version. Suspicious dark red stains were seen in various corners of the room, including in the kitchen sink, in the trash can, and on the blade of a large kitchen knife. It seemed as if he had tried to cover his tracks, but had not done a thorough enough job, and detectives also found a black hair tie that was clearly not in the possession of the tenant of the room. In addition, a significant amount of soft drugs were found in the apartment. It turned out that Joshua was not just a casual drug dealer, but was actually a dealer supplying the university campus. Despite these clues, they did not bring the police any closer to solving Jena's fate, but a breakthrough came when detectives examined the contents of a trash can. There they found a blood-stained sweatshirt matching the one Jena had been wearing the night she disappeared. The parents identified the clothing as belonging to their daughter. Joshua was arrested that same day. Several people described Joshua and his neighbor Jack as arrogant guys who were prone to aggressive behavior toward women. Some witnesses even noted cases of violence against women by Joshua. After new information emerged, a man contacted the police, reporting that the suspect hired him to transport cargo, paying $200 in cash for the service. The driver remembers the moment when an unknown person helped Joshua load a heavy plastic container into the car. The entire operation took place late at night, and they traveled about 150 kilometers outside the city to Joshua's grandmother's house. The driver helped unload the container, which, according to Joshua, contained textbooks. This incident seemed strange to the man, and after the news of Joshua's probable connection with the girl's disappearance, it aroused additional suspicion. It turned out that the suspect's cousin, to whom Joshua also stated that he was transporting textbooks and clothes, was helping to carry the container, and he also did not suspect anything at the time. Soon another person, Joshua's grandfather, contacted the police. He said that after checking the shed for snakes, he came across something much more frightening, a plastic container. Inside, he found the body of a dark-haired girl and immediately reported it to the police. When the police arrived, they found Jena's body in the house of Joshua's relatives. The girl's body was in a deplorable state. There were 140 injuries on her, indicating that the victim had been brutally beaten. Police interviewed Joshua, silent about the body they had found. He confirmed the details of his movements with the container to his grandmother's house, but made no confessions. Despite this, he was charged with murder and tampering with evidence. The young man denied his guilt on all counts. An autopsy of Jena's body, conducted on September 3rd, revealed that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and strangulation. The medical examiner found multiple blunt force injuries. Joshua allegedly punched the girl, then smashed a plate over her head and strangled her. The victim's body had a puncture wound on her arm and a deep laceration from a bite. A torn cable, presumably used for strangulation, was found in the suspect's apartment. Experts concluded that the suspect had considerable strength, which allowed him to break the victim's larynx. The discovery of Joshua's male fluid in the victim's private parts indicated possible rape. Detectives reviewed footage from various CCTV cameras in the area and found footage of Jena and Joshua entering the building where the boy was renting a room at 2:32 a.m., but the girl never left the premises alive. A day later, Joshua carried her body out in a plastic container, which was later found in a shed. A witness was later found who heard a woman screaming from Joshua's room. The screams continued for about 3 minutes, then suddenly died down, but no one made any attempt to help the girl. The question remained open as to why Jack's neighbor, who lived through the wall, did not hear the screams, whether he was a participant in the crime or was simply fast asleep in a state of alcoholic intoxication. Jack insisted that he was so drunk that he did not hear anything. No evidence of his participation in the murder was found. The trial began in 2019. By that time, a forensic examination had established that the girl had had sexual intercourse shortly before her death. This added possible rape to Joshua's charges. The defendant, in turn, insisted that the intimate contact was consensual. He subsequently offered the girl other types of sex, but she refused and left. According to the prosecutor, Jena's refusal led to a quarrel that escalated into a fight. Having lost control, Joshua killed the girl and then violated her body. Meanwhile, there was no evidence that Jena and Joshua had previously known each other. The lawyer put forward a version according to which the real culprit of the tragedy was the defendant's neighbor Jack. He allegedly killed the girl by interfering in a conflict between her and Joshua. The latter was only trying to cover up the crime to help his friend. The defense attorney also emphasized Jena's high level of alcohol intoxication. He believed this contributed to her aggressive behavior, which was the catalyst for the attack. During the trial, Joshua partially admitted his guilt, agreeing to charges of concealing evidence and desecrating the body, but he still denied involvement in the murder. Testimony from Jack's sister confirmed that Jack often slept soundly after drinking alcohol, and at such times he could not be woken. All this allowed the guy to receive immunity from prosecution. After much deliberation, the jury found Joshua guilty of murder, abuse, and tampering with evidence, and sentenced him to life without parole, plus 18 years for abuse and concealment of evidence. The lawyer appealed, arguing that the police acted without the necessary warrants when they first visited Joshua's room, which allowed them to plant incriminating evidence. However, the appeal was rejected and the criminal remains in prison with no chance of ever being released. Transcribed by TurboSub AI. Go unlimited to remove this message.